not known, but as we've been moving to the station house, and as we've been building Whitewater and doing all these different things, on top of being our pastor and a father to Novella and a husband, George has been working on completing his master's degree, and he's been working his butt off, and as of Saturday, George has graduated with his master's degree in Bible and a minoring in counseling.
No. I'm just kidding. Bible, it's biblical and theological studies.
Biblical and theological studies. So I thought we'd give a round of applause for that. That's a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you. I have my master's now. My wife is very, very happy. I appreciate her. I couldn't have done it without her. And you all have to call me Master Pastor now. So it works out really good. I was telling someone now, when you become a master, it gives you the right to add an extra half an hour to your sermons and not be funny or interesting at all. And a guy said, well, you've been doing that for a while. Well, dang it. Great to see you all. I want to begin jumping back into a story that we've been traveling through for the last 3 weeks. And so if you would, jump into this story with me, and we're going to be trying to just jump one more step ahead in this story. There were 4 men that came to a point of decision. You see, they had been traveling together at certain parts, and they'd been traveling separate at certain parts, but they all were headed to seek a great land, the greatest of all lands. And they came to this point of decision when they came to a beach. And they had to decide how they would traverse the ocean to get to the great land, because you see, the great land was beyond the sea. And so, as many of you have heard, there was one man who decided to earn the boat that he was going to take to get to the great land, because they had to travel some way across the sea. And this boat builder required that he worked, and he would earn this boat that he had built. And so he worked very hard in many different ways to get this boat. Then there was another man who saw the whole beach, and it was lined with all these old wrecks of old boats. And he took the bits and pieces, the best pieces of all these shipwrecks that were lining the beach, and he built a boat out of all these pieces. There was another man who decided to build a vessel, but he was a man of great innovation, great technology, and he wanted to build it on his own. And so he built his boat using brand new technology and that had never been seen before. Was incensed when the man had said that his boat was the best. And he said, after all our boats are equal. They're the same. There's no difference. All boats are equal. And why would you say that this direction is right, when we all know that if you take any direction you want, we'll all end up in the same place after all? Any direction brings you to the same place. He said, but look at our boats, they're all equal, and look at this man, look how innovative he was, and look at your boat's a little shabby, but I think it can get you there. He said, all boats are equal, but mine just might be a little bit more equal. After all, I've taken the best of all the boats. And the other man who had built a new technology for his vessel, unlike anything anyone had ever seen, it was so amazing. It had almost become a part of him. When he was sitting in this vessel, he had a pad that he would would always press. And his whole focus was on the technology that he had created. In fact, his technology was so great that he never had to look to the horizon to know where he was going. His technology told him. He never had to look out at the world because his technology told him what the world was like. And so he continued in his boat with his technology. In fact, he said, I will go where I want with my boat, and my technology will take me to the best place. And as he was working on his technology, the other man with the free boat came close and said, do we want to go together? Would you want to follow me to the morning star, to the great land? Because this is what the man told me. And he seems to have been there. He seems to know what he's talking about. And the man, without looking up, just looking straight at his technology, said, my technology has just proven that there is no great land, so I am not going there. And the man was greatly saddened and looked at him and said, but there might be. I mean, look at the star. I can see the shape of something under the star out there. We've been traveling quite a while now. Let's go together and explore it. The man, without looking up, said, my technology has told me that it is not so. And he pleaded again, would you just look? And the man, just for a moment, looked up to the other man in his boat, and he had a moment of sadness. And he said, I wish I could be like you, but my technology has told me that none of this is true, and I will go my own way. So the man with his own boat, with many boats put together, he traveled, and he thought that going anywhere would take you all to the same place. Unfortunately, a great wind came and blew him into some rocks, and his ship sank, unfortunately. The other man, in his boat of technology, went for a long, long time. And he got older and older in this, and he got more and more attached to the technology until they almost were one. And he, with a gray beard, out in this ocean, eventually sank. His technology failed him, it rusted, it got old, and it sank. And to hear the rest of the story, you'll have to come back next week. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's so good to see you guys. Welcome to The Journey. This is a series that I want to equip you in a few ways. One, if you've had questions, the big questions about faith, how can there be other religions? And one religion says it's more right, more equal than the others. Is that possible? If you have a question of why should I trust God? Why should I trust religious people? When you've maybe had bad experiences. And today I really want to explore science versus faith. And as you guys can probably tell, the man in the boat with technology represents the scientific, self-made, technological man of today. If I backed up, last week we discovered the other man who had to earn his boat represented the people who believe in a lot of religions, the basic pattern of religion. And the basic pattern of religion says that the God or the transcendent being or state of mind that you are seeking and that you kind of are under, the great belief, the great thing, that to earn and merit the good life that can get you, that God or that state of being can get you, you must obey the tenets, you must obey all the rules of that religion, of that philosophy, and then you can belong. Like that man, he had to do all these things to obey and earn the boat. But we learned last week that the Christian faith is the big difference is that it reverses everything. It says because Jesus obeyed when we didn't obey, and he was good when we weren't good, it created a way for us to belong to God. Therefore, we believe. Religion says you must obey to belong. Christianity says you belong. Therefore, you obey. You guys with me? I want you to have tools so you can at least understand the patterns and the difference in thinking. And I think Christianity is a great way to consider looking at the world. In fact, Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life. And a lot of people have struggled with that. And that represents, I think, a question that the second man represents, all the different boats that are put together. That's the person that says all roads lead to one. All the different religions are really looking at the same thing. There's no difference, and it's going to take you to the same place. No matter where you start off or start going, they're all going to lead to the same place. The only problem is if you're on a certain path, there's always a destination. And like last week, I was telling you about the guy who was riding in his bike. I was walking with my in-laws, and we were walking, and this guy was on his bike, and he was flying by, but his head was down. He wasn't watching where he was going, and boom, slammed right into this van. And not all roads lead to the same place. Sometimes we can actually run into a van. And so we have to take into account the destination when we're taking into account the path that we're on. So not all roads lead to the same place. That's what leads you into the rocks. That's the fatal flaw in that thinking. And you might look at me and say, George, well, you're making this story, and you can make other religions or other philosophies sound bad, or maybe you point out their fatal flaws. And I want to humbly say, look, this is what I believe. I'm coming from the perspective of a Christian, and I want to be respectful when I am representing other people's beliefs. But I don't think it's respectful to not be able to dialogue and point out objections that one may have. In fact, I want people, when I'm in conversations with you one-on-one or with your family, or if, some of you guys I don't even know yet, but when we get to talk, I want you to feel free to be able to press back and share your objections, share some of your doubts. Because when we come together and have those conversations, we can actually start, I think, getting closer to the core of what it's all about. So I want to do this respectfully, but I also think that when you bring objections and doubts about certain ideas and philosophies, I think it actually sharpens us. You guys with me on that? So you understand where I'm coming from on this. Well, science versus religion. That's the man who builds the technology, the technological boat. That's where I want to spend our time today. How many of you guys have heard someone say, science has disproven faith? How many of you guys have heard that or felt that way at some point? There's quite a few of us. Like that's one of the biggies. Because we live in a technological, scientific age. And people think of it that way. In fact, my wife, one time, not too long ago, because we're on this new diet, and the reason we're on this new diet is because my wife's pregnant. And we're really excited about this. So there's some new news for you guys. Graduated, baby on the way. We are thrilled. We're so pumped. That's all you guys had? Okay, we'll move on. I'm really excited about this. But my wife is on this healthier eating plan that we all are on now. And when you have healthy food, it doesn't last long in the fridge. It goes bad. It's not like McDonald's that can last through like an apocalyptic age, It just doesn't do that. So she was trying to get stuff, put it together, what we had in the fridge, and she had eggs. She was making eggs. And she decided to mix salmon with eggs. And she set it down in front of our little 2-year-old, Novella. And Novella started eating eggs, and then she took a bite of salmon with egg and was like, what dat? What dat? And I sat down, I was like, yeah, what is that? And my wife's like, it's health food, eat it. So I started eating it, and I was like, eggs and salmon do not mix. And she's like, it's for your daughter. And I was like, so good. And Novella's like, what that? And she would not eat it. A lot of people look at faith and science like that. They look like they don't mix, like salmon and eggs. I want to tell you that it couldn't be further from the truth. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think science and faith are a lot more like peanut butter and chocolate. How many of you guys like peanut butter? Okay, how many of you guys like chocolate? All right. I got some chocolate here, and I got some peanut butter. Chocolate, just so you know, I think it's been one of the underrated inventions of the 21st century. And peanut butter, I think, is really good. But both of them together create the most amazing flavor ever. Have you guys come on, some of you guys, have you ever gotten done with your finals and you graduated and you're like, oh yeah, I deserve this. That's really good. Sorry, end of sermon. I'm going to go eat this in the corner. Does someone want the rest of this? This is really good. I'm serious. Would you? You know you want some of this. You're like, yeah. They're like, is this how they do communion at Whitewater? Sign me up. That's really good. A lot of times we think it's salmon and eggs, but it's not. And the reason I think that is this. Science and faith are asking different questions. Science and faith ask different questions. Not competing questions, not contrary questions, different questions. Here's what I think. Science is asking this question. It's taking things apart to ask, how does this work? How does this work? You guys grew up, how many of you have taken a science class, a chemistry class, learned how do you make a hypothesis, how you have a theory, scientific method? There we go. That guy's big into science. Oh, you're not? You're not going to like the sermon. Now, how things work is you're studying the periodic table, you're studying atoms, you're studying electrons, you're breaking things apart. How does this work? Faith is putting things back together. Faith, philosophy, those types of things, putting things back together, and it asks this question: what does this mean? What does it mean? Science is not answering the question of like, what's the purpose of my life, when they've got a Bunsen burner and they're looking, what color lithium makes over the Bunsen burner, which is red, by the way. And I paid attention in science a little. It's not the same question. It's really, really important that we understand that. And when science is proposed to be an answer to a question that's about meaning, purpose, putting it back together, it fails. It always falls short. I remember taking a class to learn like how the birthing process was going to go for Novella. And oh my gosh, the doula we had, you guys know a doula. Are there any doulas in the building here? Okay, they're amazing. They have all this knowledge. They know stuff that I never really even wanted to know. And they're given all this information, and this is going to happen, and it's beautiful. And at the moment, even my wife was like, "That is not beautiful. That's gonna happen to me." And I'm like, "It's pretty, honey. It's beautiful." That's what she said. And we're learning all this stuff, and they're like, and then you're going to experience this, and they're scientifically explaining everything, and this is the height, weight, this is like the afterbirth, and this is what people do with the afterbirth. Some families actually like to have a ritual dinner with, and I was like, oh, I almost passed out when I heard that. I'm scaring some of the young men in here that are like, oh my gosh, birthing class sounds like a horror film. And it was. And it was all describing everything. It was like how it all comes apart and how it all works. But when Novella was actually born, all the stuff on how it works and what happened could not come near to hitting the mark on what the experience is like. How much love I felt in that moment for that little girl. I held her in my arms the first time, looked at her, this beautiful, wonderful soul. And I wasn't like worried about the afterbirth. I wasn't worried about like all the tests that they had to do, all the things that go along with the birth. I had this precious soul in my hands. And me and my wife, we were a family now. And it meant so much more. And when science tries to answer the question of meaning and purpose, I think we get a little lost. We go wrong a little bit. It's also like a right brain versus left brain type of person. You guys know how the right brain versus left brain works? Left brain's like analytical, likes to look at numbers. The right brain is real narrative. It's like picture, image rich. Let me ask you this. Take some polls. How many of you love Excel sheets? You just like numbers? Yes. He's rocking it. He loves it. It's like watching the Sounders win. Excel sheets. How many of you guys like math and numbers? Okay, you like that? How many of you guys like words? Like seeing words? You like writing words? Okay, that's a lot of the left brain stuff. You guys are probably really left brain people. Right brain. How many of you guys like stories? How many of you guys just love stories? How many of you guys can like look at an engine, and you might not be able to explain it to someone, but you can figure it out. You can take it apart and you can put it back together. That's a right brain skill. That's a right brain skill. And the words might not come out, like you might not be able to explain it, but you can do this. How many of you guys were really great at sports? That's right brain skills. You're right brainers. How many of you guys love art and aesthetics? Like it's big to you. It's a right brain thing. Now let me ask you this. Which brains are better? Left brain? Let's hear it. A few of you? Right brain? Okay, this is mildly excited. How many of you guys are neither? No. But which do you need? You need both. Chocolate, peanut butter. Science and faith go together. They're just asking different questions. Like a lot of people come to the Bible and they'll ask the question, they'll be like, well, what about, evolution? Can the Bible tell us whether we evolved like as Darwin proposed? Or, can it tell me more about the molecular structure of this or that? Can it tell me some atomic theory? They might come with those kinds of questions. But when we do, it's like going to Shakespeare looking to learn how to play Mozart. It's like going to a French language book and expecting to read this French book, all in French, and have it tell you how an engine works. You see, It's not that like a French language book or anybody who's French hates engines and people like engines. That's not how it works. And it's not like when Shakespeare was writing about beauty and love and life and all these stories and the narratives that shape our lives. It wasn't like he was like, and I hate Mozart. They were in different fields asking different questions. So when we come to the Bible, we have to start asking the question, when we come to faith, what are the questions at faith? What are the questions that the Bible is actually trying to answer? Is this helpful? This will change everything for you when it comes to the big questions about science and faith. And they're not at odds with each other. They really aren't. There's a lot of scientists that are people of faith. And there's a lot of faith people that like science, like secretly. And I hate it when you have like faith people and Christians that are like, oh, the science books are evil. Let's change them in all the schools. And when they get like real uptight about that, as if it's, that's going to disprove God who, in their view, created everything. Why are you afraid? What's there to be afraid of discovering the things that God has made? Why would you be afraid? And there's kind of this rift, And I'm going to tell you, faith without science leads to ignorance. Faith without science leads to ignorance. But then there's people that are like, science is all, answers all questions, and this is the God that we serve, and the faith it's stupidity, and it's this and it's that, and science without faith leads to self-destruction. Every time. You study all movements in history. One of the big social Darwin experiments in our history was what happened in World War II with the Nazis and the way they treated humans. And they looked at a certain group of humans and they said, you're a subspecies. And because you're lesser and we're greater, the stronger eat the weak. So it's okay to eat the weak, and they justified doing atrocities. It leads to destruction of other humans and self-destruction without any guiding principles of saying, what does this mean? Where is the value? How do we place value on people? Faith, philosophy. If you don't have this leads to destructiveness. You guys with me? I mean, social Darwinism, if it was true that the strong eat the weak, we would have no problem with what's happening over in Kenya, where there's people of a certain Islamic faith murdering Christians. And even in the past for the Christian faith, there's been times where Christians have bought into this idea and they've kind of let go of the reality of who God really is, this loving God, and they've started believing, well, if we're better and we're superior, then it's okay for us to get rid of these people and dehumanize them and then ultimately lead to violence. And I'm here to tell you that's not okay, and that when we lose the balance between the two, like, we lose a lot. We lose a lot. The question we can't ask a question if the answer's it's something completely different, if it's in a different field. Let me give you a few other examples before we move on. Why don't you guys answer these questions? Which way should we go? True or false? That's absolutely correct. Why do birds go moo? Yes, no, or maybe? That's right, maybe. Does this go boom? Answer red or green. Does this make me look fat? Absolutely or definitely? Don't ever answer that question. That's a trick. They're asking different questions. Jonathan Sacks says this: science is about explanation. Religion is about meaning. Science about analysis. Religion integrates. Science describes, religion beckons and summons and calls. Science sees objects, religion speaks to us as subjects. Science practices detachment. Religion is the art of attachment, self to self, soul to soul. Science sees the underlying order of the physical world. Religion hears the music beneath the noise. Science is the conquest of ignorance. Religion is the redemption of the soul. The Bible talks about this in really powerful ways. And I'm going to use my whiteboard just to symbolically explain some of this stuff, but I think it's really simple when we break it down. I'm going to try to do it quickly, and I hope this is helpful. Again, these are tools for you if you have friends that have these questions, or if these are questions you have yourself. Has this been helpful at all for y'all? Okay, good. So here we go. There's a verse There's a few verses in chapter Romans where the Bible actually speaks about creation and God, and it's really, really important. And I think it has the power to change your perspective in your life. Chapter 1, verse 19, it says this: they know the truth about God, they being humans. So anytime it says they in this passage, replace it with humans. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and the sky. And through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, his divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. All right, so let me draw this up in symbolic form for you. So there's this, seems to be this creation. It says that they, who's they? Humans. Okay, so I'm going to go like this. Human. Okay, this represents human. We'll go like this. He's kind of happy. He's human. He's happy. And then what do they look at? What are they looking at? Sky, earth. Let's call that creation. This has the ability to perceive creation. Yeah? But what else is in this equation? As people have seen the sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his qualities, his eternal power, his divine nature. So they have no excuse not knowing God. What this is saying is when they view creation, it's supposed to point somewhere. It's going somewhere. It's pointing at something greater and bigger. And it's pointing to the Creator, the God. God. So this is the equation that this is laying out. Creation, humanity, God. And we are a part of creation. God created us. But we have a unique ability to perceive both at a really unique level. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. Just as a side note, one of the struggles, I have friends who are atheists and come from a humanistic perspective, is you can only be thankful for what you earn or someone gives you. You know that? Like, I can only be thankful for what someone gives me. But if there is no God, you can't be thankful for everything that you've ever got. And so one of the hard things from coming from a technological perspective only is that you can't be grateful. You can't have an overarching gratefulness in your life because there's no creator who gave everything for you to be grateful for and thankful for. Does that make sense? And that when when a creator enters the equation, when God enters the equation, gratefulness at a totally different level can enter the equation. It says, and they began to think up foolish ideas about what God was like. And as a result, their minds became dark and confused. So they're like confused and let's say dark-hearted, and they're struggling, so they're bummed out and kind of angry and sad. That's not a stash, that's a frown. So you know. Those stashes are pretty awesome. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. Instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So God abandoned them to whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things to each other's bodies, and they traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of all eternal praise. Amen. So it says God is the one who's created. God is worthy of worship. God is worthy of hearts. But instead they traded the truth about God and they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator. So here's what happens. And this is really brief, but when we look at creation, what can happen is we say this is all there is. When we say this is all there is, one of the things that leads us to is saying that, well then, creation is God. Creation is God. And that's a lot of animism, a lot of religions in the past and in other countries that worship the tree god. They worship the sun god. They worship the reptile god. It says that in verse 23, that birds, animals, reptiles, creation, they start worshiping these things. They become God. And you have to do things to appease this God and all sorts of stuff. And if the God's angry with you, then you better appease him. And the gods always seem to be angry. And this is no way to live if you're wanting to live a grateful, thankful life, because there's not a lot to be grateful for if you can never please these creation gods. Now, the other thing it says is that they also worshipped idols made to look like people. The other way of looking at things is saying that people are the center. That God is not center. He's not even in the equation. So I'm the center. What happens is you're saying, I am God. The people become God. And when people become God, it's really interesting. Science and technology without faith in God leads to self-destruction, like we said. It leads to destruction. There's this ancient Indian parable. And it says this. It said there were 3 princes. And both of them, all 3 of them, got a new technology, a new science. And they brought them together. And one prince said, I have the ability to take a piece of bone and make the flesh grow back on it, like the sinews and the muscles. And the other guy said, I have a technology that can actually regrow all the fur and the skin and the outside of the line, the exterior. And the other guy said, well, I have a technology that can reanimate and bring it back to life. And so he said, let's go use these technologies together. Hey, these are great, and we will better the world. And so they headed out into the jungle, and they found a piece of bone, and they started working on it, but they didn't know it was a lion's bone. And the one man started creating the sinews and the muscles, and the other one started using his technology, and it created the skin and the fur, and there it was, the lion. And the last man was like, okay, let's reanimate this. So he used his technology to bring it back to life. And the lion got up, magnificent, big, huge, with sharp teeth, and he ate the 3 princes, and he jumped back into the jungle. What's the point of that story? Be careful what you create. You see, what happens is we become God, we become the creators of things, and technology starts to become the thing that destroys us. Weapons of mass destruction, who invented those things? We did. We did. A lot of technology can be used for great good, but the potential of good that technology brings also brings a shadow side, does it not? And it can be dangerous. So if we look at creation and we're the center of the universe, we're God, we're the ones in control, we're the idols, we're the ones that everything revolves around, then we start to use the creation to keep control, to make, whether it's weapons or whether it's things that make our life better, make it so that all we're doing is looking at our phones about my life and Facebook, like it can start to take over. In fact, what also happens with technology also happens with this worldview. Without God at the center, with people at the center, we become God. We not only can be destroyed by technology, but the thing that starts to destroy us is that we get addicted to our technology. We start to like and interact with our technology and our science and our curiosity. We start to interact with that even more than with people. I think it's really fascinating. I had a friend who he had his phone out. He had a headache, and his wife said, "Hey, could you watch our little boy?" He's one of my best friends, and he was just sharing this, and it was when he was sharing the story, I related so much to him. And he had a headache, and so his son was taking a bath. She's like, "Could you watch him while he's taking the bath?" And he's like, "Okay." He's got a headache. He sits down, watches him. He gets his phone out and just starts, playing games and looking at Facebook and all this stuff. Wife comes in and says, "Hey, I want you to watch him and interact with him like he's your son. Just put the phone down." He's like, yeah, okay. He goes to put the phone down, but then he grabs it again really quick and starts playing some more, Candy Crush or one of those things. And he's wired, right? And this thing that's so helpful for connecting with all these other people is preventing him from what? Connecting with his son. And his wife comes in. He's like, it was like the voice of God. And she grabbed his phone and put it on the counter and said, "Your son is only going to be this young for a moment. And you're going to miss it. Sit and be with your son." And when he shared that, I was like, oh, because I had my phone out. I was like, yeah, what were you saying, Brandon? But we get addicted. And it doesn't mean technology is evil unto itself. We find ways of allowing it to control us. It says that we serve. Yeah, it says they worshiped and they serve these things created by God rather than worshiping and serving God. And what happens when we flip this thing and all of a sudden God comes into the equation, everything changes. We see the creation, all the beauty in creation starts to point at all the wonder and amazing stuff, and scientific discoveries start to cause wonder that point us to God, and we start looking at God and we're like, wow, God, look what you made. And we get grateful and we get thankful and like our minds expand. We're like, whoa, you made, and you want a relationship and you want to love, and all of a sudden meaning and purpose start coming into our life because God's made us for a reason. It's more than just existence. It's more than that. All of a sudden we look back at creation and we look at people, and all of a sudden they have new meaning in our life, and we start loving people better. We start treating the environment better. We start loving the world that God created better. And all of a sudden when we do that, we see even more how beautiful it is. And what does that do? It sends us back here, thankful and grateful again, worshiping. Wow, God, you're amazing. And all of a sudden this thing starts happening where our hearts get bigger and bigger and our faith grows more and more, and science is a part of that. At seeing how God built things and how it all works, but it's all headed somewhere. You guys with me? This is amazing. I wanted to close with a challenge here. We're all working on a boat, aren't we? We're all trying to get to the place we want to go in our life. We're all on a journey. What boat have you been working on? You've been trying to earn your boat? You come from another perspective. You're a Christian, but you're trying to earn God's love. And you can't earn what's already been freely given, can you, friends? Or maybe you've been looking at all these other pieces of all these other religions saying, hey, they're all gonna go to the same place anyway. No. You ask any person from any religion, they will say that is not where we're headed. It's different. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if they're wrong, they're wrong. They can't be the same. And there's people come from a scientific perspective. Now all they want to say is that this is all there is. And the technology is killing them. And their own boat that they're building with their life is starting to draw them away from the things that make them truly human. People, relationships, purpose. Could you throw up a picture real quick? I want us to look at this. When you see this, what do you see? Look at this image, that's beautiful. When some people look at this, they're like, man, how many galaxies are out there? How far away is it? How many million miles? Where's the black holes in there? Where's the planets? They're breaking it down. They're left-brainers. That's how they're thinking. And then some of you guys are looking at that, and you're like, shut up, George. That is beautiful. Just stop. And let's sit. And you're like, there's wonder. There's awe when you look at this. There's beauty. And you're blown away. What I want to tell you is when you can allow God to be part of the equation, you get both. You get to start figuring things out. You can wonder about how does that work. Then all of a sudden you're like, but that's beautiful. You can start saying, man, that makes me feel small. And God's so big and I'm so small. And this is a great big world. And after all, I'm just a small boat in a big sea. And that feeling of, wow, I'm so small is so good at times because it lets us know that we're not the center of the universe. In fact, there's a verse that says this. It says in 2 Corinthians 5:19, it says, for God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave them this wonderful message of reconciliation. God was reconciling the world. With all our sin, all our selfishness, God sent his son Jesus to remove on our sin by the cross and reconnect what was lost. To take creator and creation and put them together, chocolate and peanut butter. That's what our lives are all about. This is the stuff of life, isn't it? Isn't this more compelling than just only science, only faith? Let's pray together. Father God, I just thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for what you're doing in our life. And I pray if there's anybody here who's been seeking and searching and they're trying to find the truth, they're trying to find their way, Lord, I pray that you would reveal yourself, Lord. I pray that maybe today some of the questions we were going through would help them, Lord. I pray if science has been like this force that they felt like they can't let go of, but if they are to be a believer, they have to let go of their brain. But Lord, that's not the case. You gave us the brains we have. You gave us the ability to reason. And you gave us the ability to wonder how things put together. Lord, I pray that we would be able to merge these things. Truly chocolate and peanut butter. Lord, I pray that we would see faith and science and we'd be able to grow because of that and become more and become wiser. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. You want to stand with us?